Welcome everyone to Awesome Truth, a wrestling book club. I'm your host, Steve Samino, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Walt Schwenk. Hey, Walters.
Hello, Steven. How's it going?
My friend, it is going very well. We are back on Awesome Truth, and today, Walt, we read a book, our first book in a little while, a book we've talked about for quite a long time, I would say, months, year maybe? Has it been year or years?
I think we were talking about it late last year,
Because it came out in
potentially.
2024, so it's been out for 2 years. So we've definitely been aware of it for quite a while, right? As a potential option to discuss.
You and I have openly talked about it on this podcast
Yeah, so
about
yeah,
theming a month around it. So
that's
I hope so.
and we kept putting it off because I think we assumed it was going to be stupid, and but we knew there was potential to some extent, and now we've read it and we're talking about it. Of course, I'm talking about Ronda Rousey's book, Our Fight. It's her second book. She wrote one before this, but this is the one about WWE, about wrestling. So of course, that's the one we gravitated towards because we are talking about Ronda's wrestling career and her perception of it, her memories, and a whole lot of shit talking.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we don't. Who gives a shit about that MMA stuff, Um, but we finally. And also, so just from a logistical perspective, we were able to cram this book in between cycles because we just skipped a lot of the UFC stuff
Yeah, we
and just
literally
got right to the WWE stuff, which made it a lot easier for both of us to read it in a short amount of time.
For sure. I started openly on page 100 or so. So, which pretty much maybe I'll forget exactly what page, but really right around where she loses her first UFC fight, which sends her into a spiral, which leads to her retiring, which leads to her going to wrestling. So, I think that's a really good spot if you are a wrestling fan and a fan of the show, but not really an MMA person or a Ronda person, and you don't want to know the ins and outs of various Dana bullshit or like the tail end of her UFC run. That's a great spot to drop in there because it gives you a little context on where she was at, what she was thinking, like how much the loss just sapped her will to fight, and you made her scared, and it's good stuff. Like she is very vulnerable, I will say. Even though that wasn't the stuff I really cared about, I was impressed how honest she was. Like it is one of those books where she is not afraid to say, I was shook, I was broken, I was sad. Like there's certain things I'm sure she glosses over and pretties up for the sake of the audience, but in the stuff that really gets her down, like she will own up to it and say, like, I was in a dark place, which I like.
And she admitted she was suicidal at certain points,
Mm-hmm.
and I think she mentioned she had suicide in her family history. Did I make that up?
Yes, I believe you're correct. Yeah, I think her like a very immediate family too, like serious stuff, right?
Yeah, her dad. I think maybe her dad and grandfather. So all that is to say is very honest accounting um, of what it's like to be like touted as the greatest fighter on the planet and then lose in front of millions of people.
Yeah.
So not, I mean, not to harp too much on the UFC stuff, but as someone who is training in combat sports these days, it was really interesting just to read about like the inside of a fighter. Nobody writes a wrestling biography. It's like I lost it. Well, some people actually probably did write about this. We're like I lost it, and it was like so depressing. It's
Yeah.
like, yeah, it's fake fighting, so you shouldn't be that depressed. But
that's
I say that, and I maybe I take a step back.
That's good context
Um,
for. I mean, you might remember there's a part near the end of the book where she's really down in the dumps during her second WWE run, saying like, "This sucks. This is a clown show. Everyone's a mess." And da da da. And someone it's one of the few times she doesn't quote who it is, but someone she says from a recent previous era stops her and says like, "This is all made up. Like this like we used to think we were getting it over on the fans, and now people are just getting it over on each other. Like they're stressing themselves out. They're marks for themselves. They're embarrassing themselves." Which I don't know if that's true. Like it sounds like every era has been marks for themselves and lives the gimmick and a variety of other things. But I do think it's interesting that she was able to get that context in that moment because, like you said, and when we start this book at page 100, she is depressed about a legitimate soul crushing fight in a real fight in her
yeah,
career, in her legendary career. and then she's sad about fake fights later on, and so it
Yeah.
is useful to place that as like, well, I was allowed to when I got punched in the head and I went down for the first time. That really sucks. When I was arguing with Triple H and Vince backstage, that's not maybe as big of a deal as the other stuff.
Yeah, it was also. I'm glad you brought that up because the not for someone who is extremely open in their book, she was also careful to make this one person anonymous. I mean, I don't know if it was Kevin Nash or Undertaker potentially, but
It
like
does sound like a
I
Kevin
started
Nash
wondering who the
ending.
hell
Like
was this? Yeah.
it's got Nash energy for sure.
Well, he ended it by calling everybody a bunch of nerds. I'm like, yeah, okay, that sounds like something Nash would say.
That's right. It's definitely that extremely would check
Yeah.
out if that were the case.
But all that is to say is, her accounting of losing the fight, and then the next fight where once you get punched in the face really, 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 really hard to the point where you lose, the fear, and then I guess the like the body's ability to just be concussed
Hmm.
easier upon impact. These are things that I've never really read about because I read about pro wrestlers, and so it was interesting to read. Like it just took one jab, and she's like, "I don't remember a goddamn thing afterwards, but I just knew I was fucked." It's like that would be pretty hard to compete in the UFC at a high level like that if you take one jab to the head, which is a pretty common punch, and suddenly you just lose all brain activity.
She was frightened to take a hit, which I totally get that part. But like you said, in the context of her career, you can't do that. You're not allowed to be scared. Like the whole point is you get hit. So it's yeah, it takes courage is an interesting. Like it's not necessarily the correct word, but it's nice to see such forthrightness. If someone went up to that, like she didn't make up some excuses. She was like, I was afraid to get hit, and I got hit, and then I was like, I'm done. And
Yeah.
I get it. Like I'd be afraid to get hit too, but I'm not a UFC fighter. So having her own that at that point is very impressive.
Yeah, and just also just kind of contextualizing her,
Mhm.
what made her famous in the first place was this giant, colossal UFC run that probably made her a millionaire 20 times over. It's like, I've forgotten all about these UFC names and these big card fights that she was a part of that made billions of dollars, and she was the face of, why she was famous, why we cared about her as a pro wrestler, why she was regarded as the Brock Lesnar of the women's division.
Yeah, which is
So
which is
yeah,
very useful stuff as we go further on in the book because like we said, we want to talk about Ronda's career in WWE, and there is it's very neatly split up into two little sections. One is her first run when she came in and opened with the match we've covered on this show, the Angle match, the Angle versus Ronda and Angle versus H and Stephanie match at Mania, which was a beloved match. It was on the top 50 Mania matches. It's on a lot of people's best Mania matches ever lists, and was a great debut for her. Like couldn't have gone better. And so that whole run there was and ends with another Mania match, the 3-way, which I believe have we covered the 3-way on here? Or we not.
no, we were talking about. I mean, that's probably going to be the next
Yeah, or the
War
Shayna
Chill.
match that's really bad. I feel like those are our two choices, right?
Yeah, we're going to watch the triple threat. I don't. I completely forgot about that match until we read about
Yeah,
it.
I would
But
just watch it because like, she defends it. Obviously, it's like this is a match we wanted to have, and I was like, sure, but everyone says it was terrible. So, and you sort of even
yeah,
admit it was terrible. It was just your brand of terrible. It was purposefully terrible or whatever. Anyway, we'll probably do the triple threat. But anyway, the point was she had two Mania matches that bookended a great first run, and then and she discusses that first run in great detail about came in like a didn't know anything, did a lot of rehearsing, did a lot of prepping, did and was treated, very well, I think, in terms of her booking. And then, but basically says like, left, fuck this, I hate this, I'm tired of this, I'm out of here. And then comes back with a different tone, tail between her legs, to some extent, and has a even more disastrous run where she pretty much is just one of the characters, like she's the champ, and she's the champ and she gets a bus and they give her some preferential treatment, but in terms of her booking and presentation, she really just slots into another person on the show. And so I'm curious, Walt, to get your take on both those things. Like, what stood out to you from what Ronda had to say about those particular runs?
didn't hold anything back about the front office. That's for sure. Which
Yeah.
is, you know, which we could get into. That's a whole separate conversation. But uh, I forgot so much about that second round. She's like, oh, I came back at Royal Rumble and I won, and then I'm like, I don't fucking remember any of that. I must have been concussed during that because I'm like,
Yes.
everything she was saying was sounded like new information to me, and so it was interesting. It was, but maybe that's the point. Maybe that's why she went in such. She was so frustrated by the whole thing. It's nothing really made sense. She was fighting with Liv half the time. I'm like, I don't. She lost the belt. She won the belt. She lost the belt. And it's just like, yeah. I mean, it's such a blur in my memory and what the hell was going on at WWE at that time. It's also just a weird time in the company in general. That second run, just because Vince was in but not, and as described by Ronda with Bruce Prichard with the two phones, one with Triple H and one with Vince.
Yeah.
I'm like, I forgot about all that, but it sounds exactly like how she was describing, which was terrible and chaotic. But
Yeah, I really enjoyed getting this opinion from someone who has no like I said, it's sort of embarrassing that she came back for the second run. I understand you have to make your living and she was figuring out what she was going to do next. Like I totally get why she would do that. I don't fault her for getting a paycheck. But, the clarity of which she talks about the first half of that run, which was a great run the first time she was there. She talks about it like so openly about the problems and Laurinaitis and Vince and all these things that were bothering her that never that said like you said there was different challenges the second time, but it's just a shame that she went back because she really did not care. She has no reason to lie or cover things up or anything like that. Like she's a great source for honesty about how this company works because so many other people I think want to go back or don't want to burn those bridges too much. Like there's always a hesitancy I feel like from a lot of people to speak clarity with an open mind about how pro wrestling is carny, the WWE is dysfunctional. Like there's a hesitancy there. I think in a lot of things we read, like maybe John Moxley's book being one of the outliers, but even him, I feel like doesn't burn as many bridges because a lot of his friends are still there, and like I think he's still in wrestling. Like I think he's a lifelong wrestler too, so I think he accepts some of the realities of that world. But Ronda coming from another field that is way more serious and way more legitimate and like is I think just has a sort of honesty to her and how she talks about it all, where she's and being a woman who worked to make women's UFC, the women's side of UFC, so influential, coming to a company that was trying to get their footing but still did a lot of embarrassing things, is just so candid about all the stuff that she perceived as fucked up and embarrassing, and I just think that's great. I think it's exactly the kind of thing I wanted to read. Like I wasn't even like ooh dishy gossip, but I was just like yeah, this is we would have talked about this 8 million times on the show. Like this is such weird, antiquated stuff. Like just how they do business, how they function, the way wrestlers are gossipy and pitted against each other, and just the overall uncomfortable nature of a lot of how the business works. I appreciated her shining a light on that from her own perspective of like I can't believe this functions and is worth $1 billion with how stupid and idiotic a lot of this is.
yeah, I think. Well, first off, it's funny because going into this, I heard quotes and I heard like whispers about like what she says in the book and and I'm like, okay, maybe it's like just like the rantings of a jaded, just bitter person. Like I didn't really know much about Rhonda, to be honest. And so hearing this accounting was interesting for the reasons you just cited, but also like yeah, it's always refreshing to get an honest take. But also, like, I don't know if we've ever really gotten this kind of level of honesty from someone who was truly an outsider, but then was truly indoctrinated into this whole like ecosystem. Because, like you're saying, Rondo just by the second run, she was just another performer, but she was also a tourist, and so I think her commenting on certain things that we all just accept is just ridiculous and crazy was interesting to see, just to hear her explain the chaos in a way that, like you're right, maybe John Moxley, well, as honest as John Moxley is, he skips certain things because he's fundamentally accepted certain parts about wrestling that like even as fans we accept and just completely lean over. And she's like, yeah, so this part was weird, but then even the first part of this is just as weird. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. That is kind of weird. So it's refreshing to get that outsider's take on someone who is so on the inside in that way. Like if Logan Paul came out with a book, I would imagine there would be similar revelations to Ronda, like in a way that like I don't think anybody else on the roster could really ever. She has a really interesting POV on this whole thing that I never really gave credence to until I started reading this.
Yeah, for sure. And she talks about comparing Dana White and Vince, and 8 million people have done that. But which I think she gets right, at least from my perspective, is Dana White is it certainly does not seem like a cool person that I'd like to hang out with for the most part. But he does seem like like I said, it's real. It's a real competition. So he wants personalities, he wants performers, but he wants people who are going to put on a good show in terms of being good at fighting. Like he wants people who can puff themselves up and create a whole thing in the reality of UFC. But you need to go out there and perform. Like so I feel like he gives into the realities of that situation a lot of the time, where he's like, if you're the best, you get to be the best. Like there's no like he's not gonna be Machiavellian in that regard. I'm sure there's a whole bunch of backstage bullshit there too, but at the end of the day, you have to go into the ring and fight someone else and defeat them. Whereas the Vince's whims, she talks about them in detail during the first half of that run. Like Vince would just do whatever the fuck he wanted. It was based on so little, and they always got put it under the guise of it's best for business, it's best for the company. But Ronda's like, no, it's best for Vince. Like it's whatever Vince wants to do,
Yeah.
whatever this weird old man thinks is preferable is what we're going to do, even if it fucks everything up, even if it's disruptive, even if it's stupid. It doesn't matter because he's the king and he decides it. And like that like floors her, I think, and like I said, when Vince is deposed, it doesn't get better overnight, and it still is not, even in the time we're living in now, it's still not like a smooth sailing ship a lot of the time. But it is wild that like this man can just say, well, I think this, and so this is what happens now, and everybody just bows and does his bidding. And I think it is good to call that out as psychotic. It worked for so long and it made so much money for him and so many others, but it is a deranged way to run a business.
Yeah. I also found those comparisons very fascinating. It sounds like she likes Dana a lot more than Vince McMahon,
Yeah.
which, you know, I mean, the way she describes her interactions with Dana White sounds somewhat pleasant. It sounds like there was mutual respect. Sounds good. It sounded positive for the most part. I mean, maybe in the first book, there's a whole separate section about how much of a monster Dana White is. But, I think what she said it best was Vince just subjects everybody to his worldview, and it's agnostic to business and profit. It's like, yeah, you know what? That is actually a good way to frame it, because that is kind of what's happening here with a lot of these creative and business decisions. But I think it sounded like such hot garbage where when Vince was deposed, the way she was describing it, it sounded like it was almost better. It was almost better for Vince to be there than for him to be running things from afar. It actually sounded a lot worse when he was trying to run things in the shadows,
Mm-hmm.
because it's just at that point, just no one knew who to go to, and you couldn't even go to Vince's office because he wasn't on the at the at the stadium or at the wherever they were doing things. So it was just to hear about all that was just like, oh my god, it sounds it sounds so
Yeah.
bad.
Oh, and like it really, we already touched on it, but it's just wild how, and I know this is how WWE works these days, and I think they've even come out and said it to a certain extent, but like they spent so long riding stars, be it Hogan, be it Austin and Rock, be it Cena, for the longest time, especially like a big baby face. Like that was just Vince's dream for decades, get a big baby face, ride that baby face into the ground. And now they just seem so dead set in the last like decade or so on no one can be a star. Like we are the promotion is the star, the show is the star, and almost everyone there, maybe like sans Roman or like a couple other people in there, like you're all cogs in the machine, And it's just
Mhm.
crazy and Ronda willingly put herself in this position, but she probably never thought they would have the guts to do it. To have them, like we said, make Ronda just into another performer is so crazy. Like this woman is one of the most famous UFC like top 5 UFC. Like I'm not a UFC guy, but let's say for the sake of argument, she's top 5 most popular, most influential UFC fighters of all time,
I'd
and they
say that's
get her.
accurate.
They get her on the roster multiple times, and they're having her just have regular matches with Liv, regular matches with Alexa, like all this other shit. Like it's just so crazy. And for all like we could talk about Bruce Prichard too, who also takes a ton of hits in this book, but for all his fucking bullshit on his show about attractions and these special attractions, these people that are bigger than the show and bigger like it's they had one right here had they used her that way. And for a second there, they did. But then when they got the chance, they just slotted her right in as if she was just another women's wrestler, and that's just so crazy to me. Like I think Ronda doesn't even get into because she's not of this world. She comes at it from her perspective, but it's just crazy to me what a fumble that is. That they would just say, "Okay, you're on the house show run now," and not because we want you to get better at wrestling and like get reps on a house show. You're on a house show because you just are on a house show. Like that's so crazy. Like why is Ronda Rousey doing Raquel Rodriguez house show matches? Like that just it boggles my mind. That was the plan.
That'd be like if they had Brock be a regular performer. They
Yeah,
never like even in since he came back in what 2012, like he's always been like above the rest in some way. And yeah, that is kind of
or
nuts
Logan
that
Paul,
they
like
would
you
just
said,
make.
Logan Paul does Raws and stuff. Like Logan Paul's not above doing the weekly shows, but I don't think Logan Paul's out there, burning rubber year after year, month after month. Like they use him in a very, in a way that probably makes sense to him. And maybe Ronda signed up to be a full wrestler. Like it sounds like she was willing to throw herself into it, but just because you have her under contract doesn't mean you have to use her like anyone else.
Yeah, I was trying to think of like if Bad Bunny became a
Yeah.
mid card act.
Yeah.
Like this guy's the like you know what I mean? Like that, but they care so much about that level of celeb, or they did care to your point, because now you're right. Now it's become a bigger than any star, and I imagine that's a means to keep talent contracts as low as humanly possible.
Sure. Which
But
seems like a big priority for them at this time. Whether it's
yeah,
necessary or not, probably is not. But
yeah,
that's what they're doing.
but yeah, they I understand building new stars, and it sounds like Ronda was kind of a part of that idea of like, yeah, I'm here because I mean, according to her, according to this book, she seemed all about putting Becky over, putting Charlotte over, putting Shayna over, putting whoever else over. It didn't seem like she was ever anti, even though at times it seems like she might have been like, why would I ever show any weakness to Alexa Bliss? I'm like, because Alexa Bliss is like a multi-time champion here, so you
Yeah.
kind of have to give her something. You can't just like steamroll her, but
Yeah.
so there's a bit of mixed messaging there, but yeah, I mean, you should have treated this person like female Brock Lesnar, and you did for a while, and then you didn't, and
Yeah.
now then she became like part of the non-existent women's tag division. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, that seems like a bit of a mess.
That's even crazier. I didn't even think about that. Like that is just like it's nice if they said like, okay, you are really a capital S star, but we're going to use you to elevate Shayna or whatever. But instead, they didn't. That didn't seem like it was the plan at all. And I mean, at the time, it didn't seem like the plan on TV. It didn't seem like the plan. Like, and now reading it doesn't seem like it's. It just seems like they were just like, we don't know what to do with you, and you have an idea and you want to do this, so we're like, fine, if it'll make you happy, we'll let you have a tag match.
Yeah, it's funny too because she even in the second run, her talking to Paul Heyman, her talking to all these other people, the producers. Part of me is like, oh, you naive idiot. Like, what would you think? Like, you would have a say in your storylines and you have a say in what you want to do. And oh, you want to get ahead at WrestleMania. Like, who are you to think that you can control the entire, like, ship? But at the same time, like the same way she was talking about that first WrestleMania match was, yeah, but you gave me a month to prepare, it would have like a banger of a match. Like, yeah, well, who gets a month to prepare for anything at this stupid company? But the more she started saying those things, the more I'm like, yeah, you know what? Like, she has a kind of a point. Like, she's not like naive. Like, this is like how other forms of entertainment work. This is how it should work. Yeah, I want to get ahead of WrestleMania planning so that we can build towards something meaningful. Yeah, a star, Ronda Rousey, want to be involved in like booking and planning and stories. It's like, don't they always say like, oh, well, you have to grab the brass ring and you have to like fight for your spot and you have to pitch producers all the time. Like, she wasn't even a wrestler. She was doing the shit and was still getting like completely blocked. And so it's like, the more she started saying, the more I'm like, yeah, she kind of has a point. This is how it should go. And they're really kind of just like completely gaslighting her or like completely just shoving her to the sidelines. It's like, yeah, that's kind of also kind of crazy.
Yeah. And like look at it like I said, and I understand that as the special treatment that is allotted to Lesnar, and Lesnar put in his years as a like, genuine pro wrestler who was working the shows. So like you could make the argument, I guess, that Ronda should do that. But Ronda obviously when Lesnar came in, Lesnar made his bones as a wrestler. Ronda made her bones in UFC. So when Ronda came in, I guess she could have done. She did the loops and all that, but she didn't have to. Like she was already a capital S star, like huge capital S. So maximize your opportunities with her. Like if she needs a month to rehearse a match, let her rehearse. Let her only do pay-per-views and let her rehearse her matches and like have her do matches in private. Have her like just realize what you have here and treat her like she's special because she is. Like I don't think that's so hard. And she touches on this a little bit and like she doesn't and she goes into it in certain ways. She doesn't necessarily put the onus on herself, but like there's clearly some sexism there and some WWE like not realizing even though they made events at a Mania, even though Becky became the biggest star in the company for a few years, Charlotte was up there. Like they certainly were putting the emphasis there a little more on the women, but clearly, like I think if Ronda had been a male, like if Conor McGregor had come over, if Conor McGregor doesn't want to work the house shows, or Conor McGregor wants a month, they're giving him a fucking month. There's no, I don't think it's even up for debate. I think it's because she was a
Yeah.
little more pliant, because she was a woman, because they just didn't think as highly of her that they slotted her in. And I think that's just I think she doesn't get, I think she doesn't harp enough on how silly that is.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely that element there, and she also makes a lot of comments about just the Laurinaitis and Vince and
Mm-hmm.
all that along the way. So it became clear that she was never really, you know, I'd be curious if this book that wasn't written and the events of this book weren't written during Vince's exodus, for lack of a
Mm-hmm.
better term, how much she would lean into that. I think it was just, I think obviously it was like a matter of timing where it's like, yeah, you can talk shit about Vince because like no one's gonna like A, it's not gonna stall like no one's gonna blacklist you by doing that because of that. It's of everything that went down, and B, like it's yeah, like it's all everybody would fully support you for saying that. But I'm just curious though that like I wonder had that not happened or had this been or had her run started a few years before if she would have been as open and willing. But she was definitely open and willing about Bruce Prichard, like you mentioned. So
Yeah, yeah, she really shits on Bruce Prichard, and not for being a creep necessarily, not like for being Laurinaitis or being Vince, for preying on women, just for being an asshole and for doing nothing. I think I have one of the quotes written down. She says about Prichard, "No one knew exactly what Bruce's job was or how he got it. He was the type of guy who carries a briefcase just so it looks like he's doing something." Which is very funny because like that is a sentiment that is echoed by many other people. But to hear her put it that way, especially at this point in day and age where Bruce is back and everyone's like, huh? He's back because he did a podcast and got, semi-famous again and then got a job being the Vince Whisperer or being like the toady, like it's wild that she sees him for what he is, and he just seems like exactly the type of person I would assume that he is, like in her discussing their interactions together.
it's crazy that guy still has a job there. But
Yeah. They could have dumped him out with Vince. That would have been the easiest thing in the world. But instead, he's still there, still in charge of something, I presume. Still, certainly getting paychecks and contributing to the show, and seemingly liked by. I mean, I guess probably liked by people for being gregarious and fun, but not liked in a professional sense by most people you hear about. So
I don't know how much fun he sounds based on Rhonda's accounting. He
that's
sounds
true.
like the biggest
Well,
corporate shill I've ever heard of, but also not that surprising based on what we listened to many episodes of that podcast. I'm sure it's like, yeah, all that kind of makes sense actually.
yeah, it does for sure. And she talks about Heyman too, and like the Heyman thing is really interesting to me as well. And we'll cruise to the finish line here in a second, but because Heyman, she paints Heyman in the light that I think a lot of people don't talk about him. Whereas he is, a willing ear to a certain extent, and certainly I'm probably one of the more genuine creative minds in creative, and a little more flexible and open to things. But when push comes to shove, he's also born and bred in this for 50 years. He knows how it works, or he's at least adopted how this is working in in the land he's been living in. Like he's in the situation, the structure that he's been raised in. This is how it works. And so when he has your back until someone higher up tells him no, and then he just abandons, like helping her. And like, I just think Heyman gets this reputation sometimes as like, this iconoclast, this independent thinker, this outsider. But I'm like, what? It makes perfect sense. He's been there forever. He's been working for Vince off and on for so long. Like he does, when it's time to lick a boot, I'm sure Paul Heyman licks a boot, like it doesn't surprise me at all. As much as I enjoy his character and a lot of the things he's come up with over the years, like I'm not surprised at the end of the day that he knows where his bread is buttered.
You don't survive this long unless you know how to navigate these shark-infested waters.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
you know, I I have a few thoughts about the Heyman piece of all this. One is, why would you have Paul Heyman be like the person taking text messages from like your top talent? I just feel like that's just like a weird position to put him in, because he's also like talent too. It's like, yeah, he's a head writer and he helps and produces, but it's just like, so he's gonna feel the text from Ronda about something. Of course, she fucking hates. And just like every other person in this building, he knows he has no say in this. Everybody else who interacts with Ronda and all these performers have also know that their word is meaningless. And it's just like it just becomes like killing the messenger all the time. But it's also like Paul Heyman is also one of your top on-screen managers. It's like, well, why would you put him in these weird positions in the first place? To like now he's like talking talent off the ledge when he should be focusing on 100 other things. But I thought it was interesting though that Ronda, in one of the last texts about like one of the Mania plans, and like he's like, yeah, Paul wrote this text in a way that Paul Heyman was telling me exactly what I need, what was being said without saying it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm paraphrasing. I don't remember exactly what she said, but like just like the way he communicates is like, oh, I know exactly. Like, you're not saying that like, fuck, like shut the hell up, but you more or less told me like everybody's like shut the hell up or something like that. So it's like, it's funny hearing that side of it too. It's like Paul Heyman is still Paul Heyman,
Oh
even when he's
yeah,
just like
he's like he's
interacting with talent.
toying with people, always staying in everyone's good graces, like you said, like which has always been a Heyman thing. Like everyone said in ECW, he would bullshit people like crazy. He would tell you exactly what you wanted to hear. Like that has certainly been the Heyman thing. But he also has just the reputation of being cool, and it seems like it's a thing he might cultivate with someone like Ronda. Like, hey, I'm your buddy, I'm your pal. Like I'd love to bat around ideas with you. But like you said, when push comes to shove, you give him an idea. A, he's going to put it through his own filter, and B, he's going to report it to Vince in a way. He's going to report it back to you in a way. Like he's going to be the middleman where it's never really his fault, but he's also not 100% on anybody's side. It's just like, and it just speaks to how stupid this all is. Like I know work is stupid and big personalities are complicated, and like no matter where you go, especially if you're in the public eye like this, it's going to be frustrating. But it is just wild how all these frustrations sort of work. And with H in charge now, we don't have as much of an inner working into how he runs things. And Ronda seems like she really likes H. I feel like she pulls some punches on the H front because she's like, I respect him. He seems like he's trying. He seems like he means well, all this other stuff. But at the same time, like it's not like he has, reinvented the wheel. Like they changed a few things and he's done some creative a little differently. But at the end of the day, he was born and bred under the Vince system too, So I think things are still kind of what they've been, just with a little bit of a different sheen on them on the outside.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, it is, there is a soft filter with Triple H, but also like I feel like that was her worldview of this entire operation, was like everybody was just like under the thumb of this one tyrant, and nobody could make any headway anywhere because of this like crazy influence. Because she was like saying that about other producers and even Heyman himself. Like she's saying that about everybody. She understood what was happening. She's like, yeah, we're all just kind of messengers for the same one guy.
Yep. Well, now that we read this Ronda book finally, and again, we may have only read 70% of it, and we may not have gone cover to cover, but what are your thoughts? Was it worth a read? Did you have a good time going through this one?
Yeah, I enjoyed this one. It was easy to read. Ronda's voice is pretty, it's very authentic, very, very light, very easy. It was a good outsider POV perspective on this whole weird circus. And yeah, there was a lot of pivotal moments she was a part of that she has some new and interesting perspectives on it. And if you just want to hear someone shit on Bruce Prichard and Vince and Laurinaitis, is also kind of fun for that too. So
Yeah, I was gonna say it's not as much written in like Moxley's book. I remember we were like, this is written by John Moxley, like maybe with someone else's help, obviously, but his voice shines through. Some of these chapters, maybe not so much. Some of the quotes certainly seem massaged after the facts to make everyone sound pretty smart and eloquent. But at the same time, like there's a genuineness and there's a ferocity and an anger and a frustration to a lot of it, especially the parts we liked, where you're like, okay, that sounds like Ronda Rousey's real voice. Like that sounds like a real person sharing real opinions, not something that's filtered through a whole bunch of people. Like there was a ghostwriter credited on the book, but it certainly seems like it was really her, which is great. Like I think that's what we like to see, and then the genuineness is certainly appreciated in art. Especially like I said, the subject matter was very, very much spoke to us and was very genuine, and that's the good stuff. So if you're interested in any of this, like I think it's worth a shot. I went to my local library and got it. I recommend that. I think it's a good choice, or a cheap Kindle purchase, something like that.
yeah, I bought it. So
There you go. Well, you give.
who's the nerd Mark now? This guy.
Well, if you want to hear us talk more about Ronda in our archives, we've done a Ronda match before. There's more to come. What's the name of this month, Walt? Ronda Live,
Ron Ruley,
Ron Ruley, Ron Ruley. We'll talk more about Ronda during Ron Ruley, but awesometruth.libsyn.com has our archive. Subscribe to us, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever podcasts are delivered, we are there. Walt, great to talk Ronda with you. More to come very soon. Ronda match, Ronda month, very exciting.
Summer of Ronda.
It's the summer.
Seems like a better branding.
Thank you all so much for listening, and remember, the truth will set you free.